Oh, he doesn't float anymore. Aha. This is a weird choice, but is my old game even in here? Continue, apparently it is. I'm going to start a new game. I'm not going to play Baby's version. Play the normal version. I apparently have an hour or so saved in this from, how many? 7 years ago. I remember this because it was a big deal at the time, because the developer behind this...
Here's a kid whose whole world got all twisted.
I don't know if you'll be able to hear that. I mean, you'll be able to hear it. I don't know if the mic is picking up. That was one of the games, or one of the things this game was somewhat famous for, is its narration by a man with a very chocolatey voice.
Everyone agreed to go in case of trouble.
But this is made by, I don't know if this was their first game, but this was Supergiant Games, who's now made very many famous things. But this was the first that I had ever heard of, and this is sort of how they gained some form of prominence. I genuinely don't remember much about this except this kind of odd
almost temple runny.
Well, no, because that's not the mechanics. That's
no,
just...
I know, but I mean, it's got a similar motif as far
there
as
you
the
go.
look. That's very Temple Run feel.
No, there was no fighting in Temple Run.
It's not a fight. Again, it's the...
I'm saying the fact that, well, okay, but now I have a weapon, so I can fight and dodge.
In one of the Temple Runs you did. Yes.
I don't think so. Oh, okay.
Indeed.
Rippling walls, years of work undone in an instant. In a calamity.
I don't know. They're most famous nowadays for making Hades, which is probably their most successful game. I have not played it, although I am curious about it. I have this eternal curse wherein I am very well abreast of things in the gaming world, and yet I never actually play them because I don't have money. I don't just go buying games as much as I wish I could.
Seems like that is a commonality among all.
Being an internet dweller, I know a lot about the games that come out, so I could make you think I know a lot.
It's a little bit like writing a book report on a book you've never read.
Which I've done and gotten an A on, so...
There you go.
Ah! Well, no A's for me. I didn't remember falling off. I don't recall actually what is to be done. Anyways, what's your first impression? Alice in Wonderland on LSD.
I can't shake the temple vibe runs.
Well, that's
Temple Run.
I'm
vibes.
afraid you'll have to, because I think you're way off base.
No, I'm certainly not way off base. Those that have played like the old school Temple Run,
old school Temple Run. What are you talking about? That game's like 10 years old.
Oh, I know. There was Temple Run. So I'm significantly older than that.
Yes, but I'm saying that is not like a classic thing. That was an old iOS game.
There was Temple Run, and then there was a second iteration.
At what point did Temple Run involve this?
Obviously not the shooting.
Which is what I'm doing, so what do you mean? It's like Temple Run, except for the things that aren't like Temple Run.
Is what I said.
Okay, but even then I would disagree, because Temple Run was strictly linear. You didn't actually have any choice over where to go, except in split decisions.
That looked a little linear.
This is like, I mean, yes, it's got the weird, like, paths appear before you, but even then, Temple Run didn't, like, manifest them. It was just you walked on the path that you couldn't see. I think you're hung up on something that's a little bit inapt. That's what I'm saying.
You can say that. You don't have to agree with what I'm saying, but you'll just be wrong.
No, I think you are I have at least played an hour of this, so clearly I'm the one. If anyone, you might claim to know more about Temple Run, which may well be true, but I can promise you I know more about this.
Okay.
And I don't believe that the comparison makes much sense. Unless you're, I guess, going to stick with the exclusively aesthetic, which even then I think is flimsy at best. I think it would be an insult to this game to call it a contemporary of, or at least a aesthetic similarity.
There's another game that is coming to mind, and I can't quite put my finger on it. It's an old arcade game that it played a little bit like War in the North, but it was an old arcade game that had 3 different characters in it. And I can't remember what.
Well, okay. I just killed a guy. I mean, I guess he was already dead, but I scattered his ashes. I now have a shield and a hammer. I think
made from the ashes.
Ooh, What? Ah, okay. Yeah, I'd like you to continue trying to defend your Temple Run comparisons in this context.
I'm not talking about this context.
Okay, but then what other context? This is all that's happening in the game.
As I was watching.
Okay, so the first 30 seconds made you think of a thing that is no longer apt, and now you're gonna. Okay, but you're gonna hold on to that, despite
I'm not holding on to it. I'm still.
You seem awfully committed to being that you're not wrong. Okay, goodness gracious.
There's one other vibe. I don't have to be wrong to simply say the initial vibe gave me that feeling.
Yeah, but that would be. That would be like saying, yeah, Schindler's List gives me the same vibe as. The Andy Griffith Show, because they're both black and white. It's like
dumb.
That's exactly what you're saying. You're going, oh, the intro reminded me of it because of the aesthetic, and it's like, well, sure, maybe it did, but you kind of can't just hold on to the intro.
The same thing as far as a broad enough aesthetic.
Okay, then defend yourself, because what was your opinion other than the aesthetic?
It was aesthetic, but it's not to say it's the same thing as black and white. Is like, okay, that was the medium of everything. That would be like, it's animated, therefore it's like Temple Run. That's not what I said.
That was pretty close to how it
not
sounded.
At all.
It sounded vaguely as inaccurate.
That's great. I'm glad for you. That's what
but it's odd that you won't admit that you're like, oh, my first impression was probably wrong.
It's not that it was wrong. Again,
it was, because the game has since developed such that comparison no longer applies. So saying, well, it was right for the first 30 seconds, it's like, well, okay, yes, and you may have done the first half of the math problem wrong.
No, I'm saying as you're changing,
but you still got the answer wrong.
Walking through the paths, they look like that.
So tile-based isometric then is all that seems to matter to you.
I suppose.
Which again, okay, like that. Good. We'll take a quarter of all the games that exist and call them the Temple Run clones by your.
I don't know. I don't know that I have any specific comparisons though directly, because
neither do I. That's why I'm questioning the only comparison you brought up. I've never seen anything else that quite does like this, except I guess for the other games that this developer has made.
Well, I'm not familiar with this developer.
They've made several games that all had relative prominence. Hades is their most recent, which is probably the most famous, which you probably also still haven't played, because I haven't played it either. They're not like crazy famous. They're still an indie developer, but amongst indie developers, they're somewhat well known. This kind of thing is very... Yeah, but see, Temple Run didn't have like stuff appear out of the sky. It was just that it was in the distance and you couldn't see it until you got close to it. I'm being shot at, which didn't happen in Temple Run. Whirlwind. Whoops. Okay, you press Q to do... Oh, okay, that's a very useful attack. Do I have I should get my shield out.
Do you recall? You were actually playing that game with us that I was thinking about, the arcade one.
I haven't. Well, you never actually said what it was. So.
Well, I can't remember the name of it still. It was the one at Retrocade that you and I...
A physical place?
Yeah. Right next to the... You were there at that night, and it was... myself and I thought it was you.
What is this? I don't even remember a place by that name.
Okay, well then maybe it wasn't you.
Squirt cider is not what I want to drink. Neither is fetching a fizz.
But the squirt cider really is...
I mean, I guess that's what I need, because that's the health, but I mean... Yikes. Come on. What? Confirm, I guess? Is my health back up? Okay, so my health's up. There you go. Kale, hammer, breaker's bow, whirlwind. I kind of liked the rapid fire crossbow better, but this seems to have explosive damage, so that might be fine by me. Well, I have no commentary about this game because I, again, know very little about it, other than that it was the possibly first, and if not first, then most prominent. Get your whirlwind, Sprinty. How do I do that?
There you go.
Some of them squirts birthing like crazy in a couple of corn bins.
Okay. Alright, these are bad things. So I have not much else to comment in terms of the game's history.
Well, we should talk about
talk about
the
whatever
old
you
school
want.
movie that we
I got-
watched today.
That's not that old school.
Well,
Your perspective of old school is like, once you've watched films from 1934, you're like, oh, okay.
well,
80s is no longer
okay,
old
sure,
school.
but 80s. Well, maybe I should just say then that 80s definitely had a vibe, so I should just call it an 80s movie because it's a very distinct. That's a very it's a very distinct.
80s action
flavor.
certainly had its own, but like not every film that came out in the 80s was like that.
They were either that, but maybe pacing wise they were similar though. Like a lot of the 80s films were slow. Yes.
Don't agree.
Okay, name one 80s film
Terminator.
that you would. I 100% think that's slow. I watched it with you and I thought it was slow.
You are just wrong then.
Okay.
The Terminator appears in like within
nothing
20,
happens.
15 minutes. Well, he's hunting them down, so yes, he doesn't reach them till the end, but that's what you call a climax. That's kind of how stories are structured.
Sure, but it's just slow.
You who's all coy about your media, you'd think you'd appreciate the slow climax build-up.
It's not even narratively slow. I think it's the scene per scene thing. It's the
What does stuff
this
mean
person's
falls
looking
under?
off into the distance and we're gonna hold this shot for a good, which is an interesting phenomenon that modern movies do that less or more rapid.
Yes,
I
because
guess.
modern movies often suck.
Well, I don't disagree, but I
Because they
think
don't. They,
culturally,
they
what's
explode.
changed essentially is that our
that we're all
appetites for
stupid.
change
So we are all too
is
dumb to follow
more-
a plot.
is more
changed?
swift. As far as like, I'm tired of looking at this particular
Okay. Ooh,
facet of the
ouch.
story.
Yes, because we are all radically impatient and incapable
Well,
of
that's
sitting
certainly
still.
true. I've said this before, and so have you. We've been on that expounding plank. That's not what I was going to get on. I was actually wanting to
stop
get
it.
your hot take on
Okay, there's holes in the floor. That's rude.
Top Gun.
Why? How about you give it first?
I actually
sucks.
enjoyed it more than I thought I would, because to be honest with you, and this is just unpopular opinion, I'm not a fan of Tom Cruise.
That's not that unpopular an opinion, but
Is it not? Because
not really.
But I really I thought it was really good. I think that obviously, not surprisingly, Goose is my kind of the kind of dry-ish humor that he's got going on really fits. I think that motif to me, especially within the context of the sort of.
Hail me! I'm supposed to. Oh, it's F, not E. I thought it was E.
F me.
Okay, how?
The,
these things spawn them, that's why.
I think that it fit that vibe as far as everything being kind of
So that's a stamina-based
non-sacred
attack.
or somewhat flippant in that regard.
Okay,
But
so whatever this
as far as rating, what would I give it, or more just like what I thought of it?
You brought it up. You tell me.
No,
what you
I'm
want to
asking
say
you
about it.
what metric you are wanting me to.
I mean, are you
use.
gonna rate it anyways? Because you might as well if you
maybe.
watched it.
I don't know that I would give it a 3.
He steals the city's heart. Might as well.
I probably would end up giving it like a 2, not even a 2.5, probably
Well,
a 2.
that's less than good.
But it was.
Even by your own metric, that's
true.
worse.
But it's not terrible. I think
Well, it's more negative than positive, is what that would amount to.
that's true.
And so that seems somewhat at odds with you just being like, I liked it more than I thought, which wasn't much.
Well,
So I didn't like it all that much.
I think I went into it going, I probably am not going to like this movie very much because I don't enjoy the.
This makes no sense to me, your coyness with books that does not apply to films, apparently.
What does that mean?
Well, because you're all about books taking a while and giving you like a whatever it is you look for in them, and then with movies you're like, get to the point, I don't have time for your faffery.
No, I don't know. Maybe 2's a little strong. Maybe I put it right in the
No,
middle.
that's too strong.
It was a good film. I don't know that I would own it. I'll say it that way. I would not intentionally
He finds me.
say this is the movie I want to watch tonight. But if somebody else was watching, I'd be like, yeah, let's watch this.
Well, I
Like
think it's the man with the chocolate voice.
if it was on the hotel TV channel, I'd be like, yeah, okay, let's watch this.
Your rating systems are oddly specific.
I'm trying to give it some context. So I would say probably in the middle, probably like a 2.5 for you, a 3 for me.
Don't speak for me. Speak for yourself.
I'm saying if in your rating system, for me, it would be a 2.5.
You don't got to translate.
Well, then don't act like I do.
I never said you do. I simply said you're odd, like story-based. If I was in this circumstance, then I'd watch it. That's an odd.
That
way
was
of rating
more
it.
my goofy, just kind of trying to say it's not. I like it, but not a lot.
May
I
as well
don't
just
like
say that then. So I think we've established this is sort of the.
Okay.
This is the hub safe world that we.
Is it unfair for me to say, all of those like weird
it's always
Facebook games that you get ads for or whatever they are that are never the actual games that they claim to be?
If you're talking on an aesthetic level, I can sort of see that because this was around that era.
And they're never the same. Like when you click on it, it's like, it's actually a word game, psych. I don't know why we fooled you. There's really no reason.
Why else would they fool you? Of course you know why.
But we can hold on.
I really
hack
don't.
marketing.
Well, sure.
What do you expect honesty out of marketers?
Anyway, what were your thoughts?
It was fine. It was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Funny, but not like great. I wouldn't base my personality off of it.
You don't know what's out there waiting for.
Although many people did.
Well, yeah. I mean, people of that era might have done so.
Ride the wind in the distant land.
Okay. So yes, this is the Bastion, which is what the game is called. So I think the whole point is we're trying to rebuild the weird sky city that apparently disintegrated somehow. I never actually got far enough to know what the plot of the game is, but
then we go back and save our daughter, who actually is our.
We are a child, so that if we have a daughter, that would be raising some very frightening questions.
Teasing about the weird.
Okay, it's funny how when I respond with the equal amount of sarcasm, you seem to not catch. I'm expanding upon your sarcasm by further exaggerating how odd the point would be. And then you're like, you didn't catch my joke. And I'm like, actually, I did. I'm trying to expand on it. I was trying to alley-oop.
Alley-oop.
These things remind me of Kingdom Hearts for some reason. And I don't exactly have much qualification
No,
for
that's
that.
fair. I mean, the eyes and the kind of weird
Only
floaty,
Kingdom Hearts. Okay, you suck, pal. I don't like you at all.
That's why they remind you.
The only Kingdom Hearts game I played was the one on the Game Boy.
That was a horrible representation. So
you should
play a better
from the things
Kingdom
I've seen, they're all dumb.
No, they're not.
I think you're speaking. This is your Indian in the cupboard. I think you've got an Indian in your cupboard. What did I say last week that was really suspicious?
I don't know.
I said something like that.
We opened with it too, didn't you?
I don't know if we opened with it. We said something
like
that was like, this might be, I might have an Indian in my cupboard or something like that. Something heavy. Something heavy. Upgrade the hammer. Sledge head or battle head.
Specialty weighted hammer that can punch through anything.
Anything or delivers greater force. I think destructive, it's just crit. Oh, okay. I was reading the text and not actually. So this is just more damage, and this is more critical chance.
No, better is damage because that's a consistent.
Well, because if it was saying, because the text was saying something like can punch through anything, so I thought maybe that meant it had like a penetrative. You could break down walls or something with it, but I wasn't paying enough attention.
Core ain't here neither.
Probably missing something by not hearing the sultry narration, but well,
yeah, no,
Hearts.
I'm definitely getting. No, I agree with you as far as the Heartless. That definitely seems similar.
I don't know. Kingdom Hearts feels to me like Final Fantasy, where it's like I think the only people who like it are just nostalgic.
How?
No offense, Final Fantasy even today has the bigger profile, so you don't get to go claiming like that was an insult.
I'm not saying it's an insult. I'm saying, are you?
I don't know that Final Fantasy makes much sense either.
They're tied though together in that it's got.
Well, by what metric? I mean, by the both fact Japanese games. What is that?
It's the.
Chat friends though.
the whole idea of Kingdom Hearts was because there are characters that are crossovers, to my understanding.
No.
Yes, there
I
are.
think there's crossovers with Disney characters, yes.
No, I'm saying Kingdom Hearts has Final Fantasy-ish
I don't know
characters
that
in
that's
it.
correct.
It is.
You'll
I've
have to
played the
qualify it
games.
then. Well, then give me an example.
There
You don't just get to say it.
You don't. Most of the
Is
actual
Cloud
main,
in it, or is
no?
any of
What
the
I'm
others?
saying is most of the actual main villains are not Disney characters. They're like other. They're similar to.
There's a guy who looks like Sephiroth, but he's not actually Sephiroth.
Well,
is
that's
he?
what I mean by type.
Okay, well then that's not tied. You said
Well-
tied as in they were the same characters, not that they were similar characters. Then every Japanese RPG is tied together.
Well,
That's a bit unfair. Why are we getting
Maybe.
some stutteriness? I don't like you. Okay.
Almost like
I'm getting passed around. Okay, I'm
you really
I'm a
are.
pinball in the world's worst machine. I literally can't so much as move. F me. Weird, creepy genie man. Whatever this is, I want it. Oh,
That's gonna be taken out of context.
I'm gonna die forever. Strawberry fields of what? How did I succeed? I was getting beat around like the new guy in the shower.
Wow.
What? How did I succeed at that? And I don't know how I worked that out at all. They had pity on me. Like, oh, this guy doesn't know nothing. Let's just give him this one as a pass. Final Fantasy as Kingdom Hearts as a concept. I'm just like, why?
What kind of
It just seems
animosity
silly.
do you have towards
Well,
it?
it's not exactly animosity. I just think that it sounds dumb.
Why?
Because Disney characters don't fit in a JRPG. What? Oh, okay, so that takes me to the main map. Like, when you see the weird battle thing where it's like, okay, weird anime guy, Donald Duck, and some kind of weird shadow gremlin. It's like, these don't feel like they belong in the same game at all. Like, that's just, there's something about the smashed togetherness. I'm like, it's weird.
As a kid, I will grant you this part.
Again,
but
it seems like it's like how Smash Brothers is.
Yes.
Smash Brothers gets
That's
away
a
with it
good-
though
that's a
because
good-
it's just a fighting game.
Well, that's
Like
essentially
it has
what-
nothing. No, there's a
difference is-
plot.
There's a plot, and
Whereas Smash Brothers is literally
But
what
see,
if
the
all the
thing-
Nintendo characters fought each other?
but the thing with Kingdom Hearts is
Why does this thing
you're playing.
feel amorous? Okay, this is our thumbnail. Why does the thing love me and want to squirt? Buddy, I don't think this is the right kind of game. Let's discuss what just happened.
Do you need therapy?
I might now.
The reason I liked it is
How do I get
because
out
it
of here?
is a narrative game in that there's a bit of a more complex. I played it as an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, and it's like there's more complex narrative to it, but then when you also couple that with the idea that you're playing alongside of some of your favorite
But see, that's where I
Disney
think the
game,
the
or
nostalgia
Disney,
comes from.
Disney stories. Like, for instance,
I get out of here?
in the one that I just recently started playing with my son, you start and you actually are playing through Hercules' world and end up, battling Hades and all this other stuff. Now, Hades ends up being in partnership with the greater kind of overarching Sora-like evil or whatever that it may be, but the point
Rare
is,
whiskey.
it's still
Cinderbrick Stout? Where did these names come from?
Squirt Cider.
33% speed. Hearty Punch.
But I think that part is
Oh, that sounds nice.
not nostalgic, as
Yeah, I think
somewhat
that's what it
nostalgic,
is.
but I think also it's a bit charming. Maybe is
Quaint,
a word.
but
Quaint.
but it is that because it's nostalgic.
Yes.
Like I think it's operating off of.
I don't discount that, but they at least do that well. Like where even now, as an adult, I can play it going.
I've seen the clips of Final Fantasy III, and they're. I wouldn't sit through that willingly.
Why?
Because there's a lot of weird. At least maybe it's just people making fun of the specifically ones that are bad, and maybe the rest are fine, but there are some cutscenes that you're just like, this is really terrible.
Well, as far as it being dramatic?
No, as being like, well, yes, but embarrassingly so. Like watching a bad middle school drama performance where you're like, yeah, you're certainly trying, but it's not working. I don't know how to get out of here now. I didn't mean to come back
Make
here.
the little black thing squirt for you.
I don't want to do that.
That's how that.
Last time
works.
there was this mystical staircase, and I went Lucy, and I met Lucy in the sky. Aha! Here it is. Oh, okay, so that was a pretty short area. I was already done with it. The melting pot.
I think that
going to colonial America.
Your
its attempts at seriousness fall flat because of how
seriousness is not a word I would use.
Well, you just tried to say that they had they had some degree of actual depth, and it wasn't merely.
Well, I'm just saying higher level storytelling. Okay, I'll say it this way.
What is high level storytelling if it's not serious?
It's an introduction. It is a
baby's first.
It is a junior chapter book,
and I never read those.
Okay, that's fair, but I'm just saying that's what it is. It's essentially you saying, okay, we don't want to make this a Disney game in that if you've ever played Toy Story on 64, it's horrible.
Well, okay, but those were tie-in, those were commercial cash grabs.
Right, but it wasn't that, but it still left you going, well, this is a game that I'm familiar with, and I get to play not only alongside of characters I'm familiar with, but also
I don't want this.
against villains I'm familiar with. And then on top of that had some additional intrigue with some of the more Final Fantasy elements of
okay, but when you say that, narrative. Again, are you talking about generically or the actual Final Fantasy elements?
I don't recall. I always thought as a kid that they were directly
because I know that there's a guy who looks like Sephiroth, but I don't think he is Sephiroth. I thought he had a different name. But maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe I again, never
well,
gave
it's
it
very
enough.
possible you're not, and it's just an archetypal kind of...
Why is money being thrown from the sky?
Lucy in the sky would die.
Why am I the skies? Okay, why did this have to happen? I don't like you weird genie men, and I lost my spinning kick-a-pow. I don't want to just lay trip mines, that's stupid. Well, okay, my weird love blobs are doing strange things. I have no clue what this is meant to do. I wish there was slightly more of a coherent combo type, because all I feel like I'm doing is just smashing the click button. If there was a combo in which I could actually do more damage more effectively, so my weird love minions are drawing aggro, which is a strange thing. I forgot I have that ability. That's useful. Have I insulted you with your Final Fantasy-ness?
No, I just am...
Well, I've seduced him. I've seduced the weird genie man.
Now he wants to push E for you as well. He wants to do some E.
Does that wear off, or are they going to stay my friends? I'm very confused. You can look it up. Don't you have your thing? I'm the one playing.
Yeah. No, I'm curious
who the
why
main villain is.
You have such a...
I mean, you could make the argument that the game was just... The one I played, which was on the Game Boy, was unusually sucky, and maybe that's the case.
I will make that argument, because I played both, and I actually can, with informed comparison, go, no, that one sucked.
But then the things I have seen about the ones that follow don't look any different. Maybe that's why okay, what is this place? This is just the place where everything goes to pot. I really don't like using these dumb trip mines. They're far from I want my other thing back.
Yeah.
So it is Sephiroth?
So I'm correct.
Is it Sephiroth?
It's Kingdom Hearts is a series that mixes Final Fantasy with Disney. So you're literally playing Final Fantasy.
So the guy is Sephiroth.
I guess so.
Well, that makes it... See, but that's...
And that's
because
where
Final Fantasy is whack enough on its own without adding Donald Duck. So, like, I just feel like it's misguided at
But
best.
see, then it keeps it a little bit more grounded. Just a tad.
What? No, I'm afraid that's a sentence you can't just say after that.
Yes.
You're fighting Sephiroth with Donald Duck, and that's more grounded somehow than just fighting Sephiroth on his own?
As a kid,
'Cause that at
yes.
least-
Because it gives you some
no,
sort of
you don't get to say as a
familiarity.
kid it's grounded, because a kid wouldn't care about it being grounded. It might be more familiar, but that's not
Well,
grounded.
maybe familiar is a better way
Because,
of
like,
saying it.
grounded in the sense that, like, okay, you could just argue that Final Fantasy is a fantasy universe,
Sure.
and as such, you know, it might be sort of mystical and fantastic, but it's grounded in that it has its own consistent logic. Whereas
I think-
to mix Disney in there means that it no longer has a consistent logic because it has Disney logic now.
Here's what I will say. As a kid, and even now as I play through it as an adult, what intrigues me and draws me to the Kingdom Hearts games is not the Final Fantasy elements as much as it is if you could package a game where you as the main character, in this case Sora, are playing through various Disney games and they're given protagonist antagonist vibes.
But see, why not
That's
just
what
play
it is.
Yeah, but then
Then play
why
the individual
why
game?
mix
Is that what
Final
you're saying?
Fantasy in there at all?
You don't need to, but
they did.
Yeah, they
So that
did.
raises the question of why.
I agree, but the point is, Kingdom Hearts alone, they did a fairly good job at, because the lion's share of the game is just playing through Disney movies, essentially.
Yeah, but see, that's dumb to me.
Why?
I don't, because I would.
Part of it is just because we don't like Disney movies as much, but
Well, no, I like. It's more of the question of why did they need. It's like how they turned a lot of Disney movies into Disney Channel shows. It's like, yeah,
Well, that's
Hercules.
certainly true,
Hercules
too.
was a great movie, but the Hercules show was stupid.
yeah.
Well, I'm sure some people would argue that's like, actually, it has more nuance in these. Like, I've heard people argue that Hades is more fleshed out in the show, but I'm like, okay, whatever. I mean, you could make that argument, I suppose.
Well, but I think
The episodes I saw certainly were stupid.
and the case can still be made.
The
It's
Aladdin
the
show was-
unnecessary.
No, the Aladdin show
elements.
was just jank and dumb. It wasn't that it didn't need to exist.
So
it's
was
that it
the
just-
Emperor's New School. That was really sad.
Yeah.
That one was
I watched
really
more
sad.
of that than the Aladdin show.
There's no justification for that.
No, it really didn't make any sense. Yeah, it didn't. I don't know. For some reason, there was a part of me that was like trying to think. It was like, did it have any reason? No, it didn't.
It didn't. But see,
But see, that's not bad because it's unnecessary. It's bad because it's just badly done. Like the
But
Aladdin
see,
show was
Disney.
stupid.
But see, Kingdom Hearts isn't. That's what I'm saying. It's not badly done. It's just a weird blend. It's like, why would you need to blend these two?
Yeah, but then
But
that
sure.
also raises the question of just because it did it well, maybe fine. It's not something I wanted done. So the fact that they do it well is kind of where I go. Okay,
I don't
great
know that
for
I
you.
agree with that.
You made a great painting out of human feces. That's great.
You can't
great
go back to
accomplishment.
that.
No, I mean, it's like, yeah, you can
argument.
do something impressive, but that doesn't make it something I wanted you to do.
Sure, but I mean, as a kid, I would argue I actually did
But
enjoy
see,
the
you
Final
keep redounding
Fantasy.
to the argument of, as a kid, I
No,
liked it.
I'm
And
saying.
like, well, I don't deny
now
it.
I
For a
can
kid,
even say, as an adult, I
With
still
a kid,
appreciate the games.
that needs to be included. I think if you played it as a single man, you might be like,
That
yeah,
may be
this wasn't for
sad.
me.
But I'm
No, not sad. I just think if you played it as a grown man who didn't have, like, I imagine if I played it as someone who doesn't have the nostalgia for it and who doesn't have a kid to whom I am passing it on, I think I would be like, this is whack. I felt that way. Didn't we try to play Epic Mickey and record it once and we gave up because it was like, yeah, no, this isn't for us?
what?
It was either Epic Mickey or some weird Disney.
I don't remember that one. Epic Mickey 2 was one that I remember because I own that one, and that one
I
is
remember
very.
we tried to do a recording of one of some kind of Disney weird thing, and we gave up because it was like, this is not a thing for adults to play.
Yeah.
I feel like I would have a similar impression if I played Kingdom Hearts as a single guy.
Maybe you would. There is a
Again,
part of it.
It's similar to the fact that, like, I want my whirlwind attack back. These trip mines are useless. Like, for example, when I watched The Iron Giant, as someone who didn't have any of the nostalgia, I was like, oh yeah, it's a fun movie. But I was not like as enthusiastic about it as the people who watched it as kids, and they're like, it's the best secret movie, and like it's way underrated and all these things. I'm like, no, it's good. I liked it, but nostalgia is the reason all these people go nuts.
Sure, I would say the reason I'm going back to when I was a kid is because that was when it was early. It was actually in its infancy stages.
That's when it was new.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So,
but just because it was new doesn't make it.
No, but I'm just saying. Well, okay, you just fell into the void.
Yeah, this is a very narrow
Within
bridge.
that context, I would say it wasn't just the Disney part that drew me. I actually did appreciate the Final Fantasy elements when I was a kid because it made. This is going to sound incredibly. What's the word I'm looking for? It's going to make me sound incredibly simp.
Well, I mean, you're doing a good enough job.
Wow. But I think the notion that I felt big, like I was playing a game that was like bigger than just strictly a Disney / whatever, because it had elements of like, oh, this is more not even complex,
but
but
feel like you're really just adding fuel to the argument that the reason you liked it is because of nostalgia.
I don't discount that. I'm just saying now I can. Here's the distinction. I liked Indian in the Cupboard when I was a kid as well, but then we went back and watched it and it was trash. This I actually went back and played and went, I still appreciate this.
And I think that there is an element of when you share. Like, I can absolutely understand that I'm now playing a game I played as a kid with. It's a generational thing.
Sure.
So I think that.
But okay, in the same way that
you
you
feel the same
up,
way if you were only watching it or playing it on your own?
I think I would. In the same way that if you play like something like GoldenEye and then you go back and play it,
I'll admit
like,
I play GoldenEye and I recognize like it's aged quite poorly. It's very old and it's quite. But I admit that part of the reason I like it is, I mean, there are things that it did that I think games since have learned from. So I think that it does deserve a place in that it was influential. But to say that, like, you could just recommend that to anyone these days without the qualification of its age. It's like, no, I don't know that it quite stands up on its own unless it's to someone who is at least familiar with N64 games. Like, you might not have had to play it before, but you would have had to play other N64 games to be able to appreciate it.
Sure.
So I wouldn't say, like, does it hold up on its own? I'm not sure. I'm not sure a modern audience would appreciate it.
Maybe not, but I do think if you can adapt it to a modern audience in the same way
they've tried. There have been 007
and they've suggested,
other games, which don't seem to have attained the same level of.
Yeah, that's true, but I think that only in that context. I mean, like, look at something like Smash, obviously, and that's carried its weight the entire way, basically. I mean...
Well, I feel like they've sort of gone a little bit nuts these days, where it's like, now we're just going to add characters from every video game, literally ever. It's
Why not?
Well, because it used to be a Nintendo thing, where it's like, oh, here's all of the Nintendo characters, and which one would win in a fight? I mean, that's the age-old top trumps argument, like... Would Batman beat Superman, or it's like that's just an interesting
who else
hypothetical.
Would be adding that you're saying?
Well, like everybody, they have characters. They have Minecraft's in it now.
What?
Yes. So it's like they've gone from Nintendo stuff to just like, oh, it's all of gaming, and that's a little bit too ambitious because you can't do all of gaming. So instead, it's just a random selection of strange Japanese games. We've had some kind of a cutscene.
Mr. Game and Watch. No, I'm not discounting that nostalgia is a significant driver. I think what I'm saying is there are certain ones where nostalgia can't even save it when you rewatch it or replay it or whatever it is. And then other times where it's like, this is still a decent game that I would play even on my own. Like, okay, good example. I reloaded for my son Ty the Tasmanian Tiger, and he started playing it. He loved it in the same way that I did when I was 8, but I was watching him going, this is stupid.
But I think I never played that one. I saw it played. A friend of mine had it. I don't remember. I don't think I ever played it myself. But that's, I would put in a similar category to games. Is it not unlike Banjo-Kazooie? It's where it's like you just wander around and collect things and unlock more areas to wander around and collect things in. So, like, I think Banjo-Kazooie would... Again, I think it's... The trouble is, when you talk about a modern audience, like, again, I think Banjo-Kazooie is a classic to anyone who's played the N64.
Sure.
So someone who was my age who had never played Banjo-Kazooie but at least had played other N64 games, I feel like I could recommend it fairly strongly because they would be familiar with the limitations of the N64. Whereas I think a modern generation raised on, the Xbox 360 and later would have a very hard time getting over its graphical
Well, yeah, without
limitations.
update, yeah, for sure. But I mean,
not
like,
that
if you
that's
take
necessarily valid.
conceptually,
Like, I think things can still be good despite those limitations.
Well, case in point,
but your argument of them
Animal
being
Crossing is one that's
that's
still
still
popular.
around.
Yeah, and that's my point. It's still popular, but it really hasn't changed its animation style much.
It's got graphically, it's improved. The art design is the same.
Somewhat. I mean, it's not.
No, the old ones were very old.
Oh.
Like just because the art style hasn't changed, the graphics have still improved. Graphics and art style need to be
That
distinct.
to me was arguably one of the earliest MMO sandbox. I'm just gonna build.
It's not an MMO.
Well, I mean, yes, it is.
No.
Yes, you can play it with others online.
You have to have codes that you share. Like, you can share it with a friend.
Sure.
That's not an MMO. MMO
Well,
is everyone.
okay, maybe I'm being a little generous by calling it an MMO, but I'm just
massive
saying
massive multiplayer
Yeah.
online. It
Yeah.
is only one of those things
sure.
because it's neither online nor massive. It's just if you send your code to someone else, you can play in the same world. It's like it would be like a private
it's
Minecraft
one step
server
in between,
at best.
right? It's kind of the
I
mid.
would call
it's
it more than one step. It's a
kind
couple
of a
steps
midpoint
before.
between the LAN party and the mass multiplayer.
Sure, we have more ashen statues, which I'm going to destroy. And
Those could have been people.
no, they're ashen. I can't interact with them in any way other than to destroy them. It would seem. Nothing else I can do to them. So apparently the world got nuked, and I survived. And the world now is being reshaped in my image, apparently. This is some kind of a Hindu myth. That would actually be fascinating. Have there ever been games based on Hindu myth? Where it's like you reach the end and it turns out you were Shiva all along? That would actually be fascinating. I'd like to see that. If only because I don't think it's ever been done. So hang on, I see weird, creepy Bela Lugosi over there. How do I get over there? Okay, these rocks are not as much of an impediment as they seem like they're trying to be. I don't know.
But I mean, Kingdom Hearts has had updates, and then within those updates,
Yeah, but see, the more recent ones are the ones people make fun of for being weirder.
See, and I haven't played the more recent ones, to be fair. Outside of the one that I have on Xbox, which I only have a bit of a demo-ish
would that be
thing.
2 or 1 or...
It's 3, I think.
No, 3 is the one that people think is whack. Again, I've only seen the cutscenes, but the cutscenes do a good job of making it seem whack. There's
Primarily the Final Fantasy cutscenes.
I don't know who's who in them, but it's like there's the one weird scene that's become a meme of like the characters laughing in ways that seem like they want to die secretly. Where it's like, this is not how human interaction is at all. If you look up Kingdom Hearts laughing scene, I'm sure you'll get it, because that's the one I have seen most famously. Because it is the most common example of Kingdom Hearts, it turns out, has just always been really uncanny and strange. Hello! I don't want to be here. Oh, that was excellent. Okay, that was great. These grenades are not as bad. The combat...
Is there a game that you would say that you came across, or that you had played back in your youths, that you went back to and went, no?
I don't know that I've played games from my childhood often.
Because I found the Cabela's hunting game the other day, and I was like,
that's
that was
good.
trash.
I kind of knew that at
We
the
knew
time.
that at the time.
I mean, it's engaging enough to do once, because it was a Wii thing, so it was in the early days of point the Wii at the screen, and that's how you aim, and isn't that novel? And it was for a time, and nowadays it's like, yeah, no, I wouldn't do it again.
He's got quite the stash.
That is quite the stash. Who's the woman?
I hope it's his mom. Son, this is my mistress.
We should probably be hearing what's going on here, but we're not. So what about that?
Is there
The
any
short hair vibe? That's an interesting.
Oh, it's actually.
Her name is Zolf.
Zolf offers to help me plot the skyways
Ooh.
for the kid.
It's very nice. Her name is Zolf.
For Zolf, Ceylon was like his second home.
Zolf. See, why don't we have cool names like that anymore? I feel like we ought to just get to the point where you can name your kid whatever the heck you want. Oh, his name is Ruck. Oh, I thought his name was Ruckus.
What else is there to say?
And I was put in mind of Uncle Ruckus, and that's
It says hello. Zolf.
I don't know.
You wouldn't say any game though that you played through outside of like the more obvious, like this was just clunky and not good even at the time. But I mean,
I see. That's the thing.
See, like, we went
if it
back
was
to The
clunky and
Hobbit.
not good, I wouldn't see the Hobbit. I think holds up.
I said
In fact,
we
I
went
think
back
it's
to The
one of the
Hobbit and I
best-
thought it was good.
It is the best Hobbit tie-in product that exists.
As far as games, yeah.
No. As far as anything, it's better than the films because it actually follows the books quite rigidly.
I don't know that's better than the films.
It's better than the films are. It's
No.
perhaps not better than the films could have been.
No.
The issue with the films is not that they were inherent. The films are, in fact, more frustrating because of how close they came to being really great. It's like they had lots of really good elements, and yet it's those elements compared with some really stupid choices that lead it to be even more frustrating than if it had just been bad.
Yeah.
Okay, that's worse. It's even worse. Something nasty. Something nasty. Squirt lore. Okay, so these are my I don't know what you'd call them. Abilities. Stabs in the.
I think I know. I think I know where it stabs in.
I
Yeah.
want the.
Go back down. Just look at it for a second.
I have no clue what any of this stuff means.
Go back down.
I mean, what? What's it's?
Yeah.
What? It's. I don't.
Anyway,
It's a. Whatever euphemism you're trying to make, I don't know that I'm following.
you're not wanting to pick it up.
Well, that's probably true. I don't think I would want to even if I knew what it was. I think the film.
You really don't know though, like as far as because I would agree, The Hobbit is not
I'm
really
trying to
one.
think of any game that I liked because I feel like when I was a very young child, I don't think I really paid any attention to games. In which case, I don't think I have any from that time that I am fond of because they were things that I did. I don't know that I ever chose to I like video games. I think it was just I like being entertained. And I think once they stopped doing that, I stopped playing them. And then once I started caring about games, if the game sucked, I just didn't play it. So I don't feel like I ever had a stage when I was like, oh, I really like this as a kid, and it turns out it's not good. It's like either I either didn't notice it sucking as a kid because I didn't care, I wasn't savvy enough to notice or to care. In which case, going back, I don't have fond memories. Or the games that I did play were games that were reasonably decent, and thus I do have fond memories. It's like I'll hold that the Zelda games are good from that era. I think Ocarina of Time's a great game despite its age.
For sure.
And I don't think that's exclusively nostalgia. Obviously, who can say?
No, that's
actually,
not.
I mean, I feel like I can because I actually didn't get into that
Objectively, there's
until
quite a few people that start there.
well, that doesn't make it objective just because a few people say it, but
No, I'm saying I would say
I also feel like I don't necessarily have nostalgia for that because I didn't play it until I was much older.
Right, exactly.
So I don't think that it counts as nostalgia at that point.
Correct.
I mean, I suppose the only defense that you might have would be to say that because I had already grown up with an N64, my expectations weren't as high as a modern game might have made them. But even then, I feel like that's... Okay, I'm being chased by a weird floating blob. I think that is... If anything, that's sort of an indictment of your own... If you can't get past the lack of modern stuff in something that's old, I think that you're kind of being unfair to it. Because for example... Ooh, what's this? This looks like some kind of a weapon. Can I have it? Hey, what is this? Must get... Oh, I got a blunderbuss.
Something that'll punch clean through.
Yes, please. Okay. I am getting myself shredded to bits. Okay, I still got the wrong thing. I've completely forgot what I was saying. You remember? I've lost my plot.
I mean, you were on. We were still kind of talking about the fact that there's.
I've forgotten what I was gonna say something, and then I got attacked by things, and then I forgot. And I found a musket.
I was arguing that
nostalgia.
or asking rather, whether there was any games that you would say objectively you could play through now and go, that was purely nostalgic. But
that's what I forgot, because I was using that as I was gonna go, because I think that there is an element of if you expect a old thing to meet a modern standard, I think you're not being terribly reasonable in your expectations. And so for that reason, I think, like, if someone who has never played video games, and would I directly recommend them something like the Ocarina of Time? Probably not.
Right, because it's a little involved.
But not even that, it's old, and thus it might be off-putting.
I don't even think it's the old aspect for me as much as
Well, I think in terms of someone who... No, it isn't. Certainly not in comparison to modern games.
Well...
So to me, it's more of the fact that, like, if they were a...
Where would... maybe a better question is, where would you start them then?
I don't know. I would have to gauge... It would depend on their experience, because it's like, again, if someone had played N64 games and just never played Ocarina of Time, I would say, yes, they should play it. Because... they are no doubt going to still be somewhat used to the conventions and limitations of the N64.
Sure.
Because I can't deny that such things exist. But that's what I was trying to get at is, I think if you guys suck, I think that if someone is not able to look at a thing that's old and view it on its own metrics rather than modern things.
Sure.
It's like if someone was a modern gamer who never played anything old, I don't know that I would recommend them an old game, not because the old games aren't good, but because I don't think that they'll
appreciate it.
Yeah, because I think that that's just, your standards are a little unreasonable to say I expect old things to fit what modern technology is capable of.
But you're saying, like, within the case of Kingdom Hearts, that you think even from the beginning you thought the idea was a bit silly.
I thought it was the idea certainly remains silly. Like, novel to a child, sure, but that doesn't...
Yeah, novel's a good word, because I...
Okay, I like my musket.
I think
conceptually it's dumb, which does, in my mind, remove the credit of it being good. Because to do a thing that is dumb well, okay, I thought that was rude. Sort of is, again, it's like, okay, it's impressive that you did it, but why? Because I still don't want it.
Yeah.
It's like, thanks for making this decent.
So thanks for
like, all you've given me is a good version of a thing I didn't ask for.
Yeah.
So I can respect the objective quality of it, perhaps. And
now,
I've seen some wacky things from Kingdom Hearts. So I'm not sure.
So here's what I say. Here's the two elements that I did kind of want, I suppose is what you could say.
Whoa.
That then they also executed well. Is that, again, it is I'm playing through a lot of my favorite Disney movies in a better game setup from that particular studio as far as narrative and that kind of thing.
Because
it's para story. It's a parallel to what's going on in the actual story. So, like, you're playing with Hercules, they don't just say, well, let's play through the game of or the movie of Hercules. It's like, no, that's dumb.
Why wouldn't that be what you want?
No, because that's boring. I want it to be like
see, this is what I don't
not
get.
Build Your Own Adventure, but like a come with me into a new kind of. They took the time to build a new narrative, which I think is unique. But then they actually said, okay, no, we're not just going to give you only, Hercules. We're also going to say, here's I don't know. I'm trying to just name a few off my like. Here's Toy Story, and then here's you as you kind of play through the various stories, you are able to play in to I guess explore the world of your favorite Disney movies without it being so boring as to just say, let's just give them the same story that they've already watched on TV.
But this is what I don't... It's like, why... I guess that's where I've never felt like the world of any given Disney movie was that entrancing that I would want to play a game in it.
But Kingdom Hearts does a really good job of building that. Like, for instance,
I don't think
in Toy Story,
would, 'cause I don't
you actually
care.
come into the room and then you get shrunk, and then you are in the same level of toys.
I don't care.
But I'm saying it's
Toy
an
Story is a fun
auxiliary
film
story.
because I like the film. I like the plot
Right.
of the film. I wouldn't just want a game set in that world because the world isn't what's interesting. The world is ostensibly our world. It's ostensibly
But I don't like
real
playing
world film.
as somebody else from the movie.
Well,
Does that
sure,
make
but
sense?
this is where I don't
wanna play
like
as one of
playing
the Buzz.
games that are tie-ins.
I want
mostly.
to. Okay, so if it's the hang up on the tie-in, I'm not mentioned that really because again, I say the lion's share of the
it
game
is.
are primarily just
Disney things.
Disney things,
and I don't.
yes.
I don't want those.
that's not a tie-in.
Yes, it is.
To
That's
what?
the definition of the Disney films. This is just a game, and it's continuing the films. And I'm like, I don't want the game to continue the films. I don't want. If I wanted the films, I would watch the films because the films are good. I don't feel the need for it to be something other than what they are. This is where I actually don't think... I'm not overly fond of things getting adapted very often. From anything.
not talking about
that is to say, I don't care if books get made into movies, or if games get made into movies, or if movies get made into games.
okay.
I would rather they just be their own thing.
But what are you getting at?
Because I'm saying, why do you need a game that's set in the Disney world? Because the films are also set in the Disney worlds, and they're fine. I don't think you need something else.
Because you get a sense that when you're playing something like Epic Mickey, you're playing as either Oswald or Mickey or whatever. Whereas with Kingdom Hearts, you are able to insert your own personhood, I suppose, into the
because
game.
Sora's a character who's not you.
But
you don't get to make
But
your
it's
character.
outside of. I suppose I took it that way though. It's outside of the realm of the Disney narrative, therefore, and in fact, you actually do get to build some of his attributes at the beginning of each game.
Okay, so it's just a self-insert fan fiction at
Yes.
that point, and I don't read those.
Well,
because I'm not interested in them.
that's fine. I will read my 50 Shades. I'm just playing.
Well, but see, that's what I think we're getting at. Is it's like I don't want a fan fiction of a thing I like because if I like it, I don't feel the need to. I just think, to me, I want things to be what they are, and I don't want because there's this weird idea that like, and admittedly, this is more of a thing that happens when games get made into movies rather than movies getting made into games. Is that there's this sort of notion that now it's an acceptable public thing because now it's a movie which everyone watches, not just a game which only nerds watch. And that's an attitude that's changing, but that is still somewhat the case where people think that it's somehow more respectable now because it's a more mainstream thing. And I find that an attitude I don't endorse.
And for me, it was purely just like, hey, how can we... If someone came along and literally said, I'm going to package a game that I'm a developer and I've built essentially this massive world that connects all the various Disney movies into one kind of single world, that's Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, but I don't know that I would ask for that.
See, and I thought that was really
To
cool.
me, I'm
as a
like,
kid.
Disney, if anything, that strains the already somewhat tenuous credulity that some Disney movies have.
Well, that's true, but
I mean, it's like that.
you have to embrace some level of, and that's why I think
Because like Toy Story ostensibly is the real world. It posits like, yes, this isn't some fantasy kingdom. This is like your toy. What if your toys actually were alive? That can't exist in the same world as the Disney princesses, who are at best historical figures. If you want to suggest that they existed,
but Kingdom Hearts is predicated on the idea that
Disney is a fiction.
Disney is a fiction, and
that's
the
why I'm
Final
saying-
Fantasy side of it is the real side that gets sucked into.
Yeah, but see, if anything,
you will.
that's almost worse because it's acknowledging the unreality of the premise. It's like this is fake, and that's why we're doing it. Because that's the nature of it. It's like it is. It's acknowledging that Disney is a fictional. All of Disney's stories are fictional, and thus a fantasy imaginary world has to be cobbled together for them to all exist. Even in the sense of when like the Disney princesses, it's like let's be generous and say, okay, well, let's say that if they weren't fiction and they're just historical figures like myths from the past, they still wouldn't exist at the same time. So to do so would require kind of, again, a sort of fan fiction-y twist. And I just go, that actually lessens the story because now each of them, you're making it less real than it already was, and it already wasn't very real.
So, and I don't know that ever bothered me because I go, it's
like something like
it's you know what it is? It's the same reason why I like the playthrough additional expansion pack of not Fallout of BioShock 2, where you're able to play
I didn't like that game.
See, I agree. I know you didn't because you basically said
it's a worse version of the first game.
And for me, I went, no, it's an expansion of, well, what if this happened as well?
Yes, it's an expansion that sucked because the other characters weren't as interesting as the first game's characters.
Arguably so, but
and yet
then
they argue that like Lamb is supposed to have taken over Rapture when she's an imbecile. And I'm like, no. No,
then also,
Andrew Ryan would not have suffered this fool, and yet apparently she beats him in debates and is like, oh, now everyone likes her. And I'm like, this is not how I imagined it would happen, because Andrew Ryan, at least as he was in the first game, would have wiped the floor with this idiot, because her points are inane.
But
and yet the game gives her credence by suggesting that, like, no, she's actually smarter than him. And I'm like,
but
no.
It's worth it to me to go, you get to play through parts of Rapture.
Yes, you get to play through parts of, well, okay, are you talking, you're talking about the DLC, not about the game itself.
Right, correct.
You're talking
That's
about
what I mean. But to you were like, that's
that was also Infinite, wasn't that?
Oh, yeah, it was
Infinite.
You're right. It was
so
Infinite.
That's different.
But see, you didn't like that.
I didn't like it
you
because
felt like it was like, this is kind of
well, because
weird...
here's the thing. It's a fun idea to say we're going to expand the world with more details. That's a nice thought, except if you expand it in a way that makes the world worse. It's like, I'd rather you... Well, because it made less sense. And was... Yes, Burial at Sea, if taken literally, I think is actually ruinous to BioShock story. The only acceptable interpretation I have heard of it is as a... Essentially,
it's a quantum. It's essentially It's an infinite possibilities realm thing. It's a
fine, but then I would say it has to be distinct from the actual plot of the first game, which they don't make clear. They in fact try to suggest that elements of the first game happened because of what happens in Burial at Sea, and that's where I go. I reject that because that actually worsens the plot of the first game, which I like. So if you expand the world in a way that makes it worse, I would just as soon have had you not do it at all.
Whereas I say it's worth it even to do something like playing through an hour of the game in BioShock or in Rapture before it went tits up.
I mean, fine, if it ended there, I'd be like, oh, but then that could just be a fan creation of like, oh, this is
but you'd still, in that context, it's the same thing. It's a fan fiction that it's made.
Yes, but that's a different level. Whereas to say, no, this is actually what happened, I go, well, then that makes it worse.
So
I'm not opposed to fan fictions in the sense of like, isn't this an interesting thought?
That's what Kingdom Hearts is.
No, because it's at least that's not the way many people act of it. If you just say, yeah, it's sort of a fun like what if, but I would say something like Smash Brothers is a what if because it literally doesn't have a plot. Well, okay, now the modern ones have tried to put a plot into it makes less sense.
Yeah.
To me, if you just say, here's all the Nintendo characters, which one would win in a fight? That is the kind of, middle school hypothetical you'd get into. Like, oh, I think Batman really could beat Superman. That's just, no one's such, I mean, if anything, the comics tend to be worse when they actually put them against each other sometimes. Sometimes they do it all right. I am not doing well with this area. But the point is, if it is purely a hypothetical, in which it has no plot and is just, the whole point is who would win in a fight, or something similar, that can be fun because its own unreality is acknowledged. And you're saying, we're not trying to make this a real thing, we're just saying, wouldn't this be kind of a crazy idea? But if you give it a plot and a meta-narrative...
That's the problem.
And that's where you go, well, now you're not suggesting that this isn't happening, you're suggesting that this is happening. You've created a whole plot for how it could happen. I'm like, why? If any, it's.
I'm just saying it doesn't bother me. It may bother you, but I don't know that it bothers me in the same way, again, as rewatching it in the cupboard and going, oh, this is not good. There was no Indian hidden in Kingdom Hearts closet, in my opinion.
Well, I'm not suggesting that they're...
You may throw an Aborigine in there in yours, but I'm going to keep them clean.
I have no context, so... I am simply saying your argument that it's fun because it expands the world, I'm like, that is only fun so long as the expanded world is as good. If you ruin the world by expanding it, I'd have rather had it be small and good than be expanded and dumb. That's, I guess, what I'm getting at, so...
And the whole idea of wizard/sorcery Donald and Goofy is
well,
just
no, because
weird.
it's like, again, Final Fantasy, you tell me this is a fictional world, but we're going to pretend that it's real for a day. I'm fine. That's what all fiction does. Is it says this is a thing that didn't happen, but we're going to pretend like it did, so that we can tell an interesting story.
Well, so why aren't you okay with?
But no,
so
it's
this
when
is
you
what
try.
happens.
But when
They
you try to
suck
combine
the
two
Disney
things, now you're
characters.
suggesting now this fictional world and this other fictional world got combined, and in order to do that, you have to acknowledge the fiction of both of them. It's essentially saying. I don't know how to say it in a less... Because I feel like that's not exactly clear, but I'm not trying to make it clear. Because it only works by acknowledging that these are fictional works.
I think you could lean to
I
think you could lean to the Final Fantasy side in the kind of, again, meta-narrative, like, it's not real, but you're embracing the fact that the
except for the fact
Final
that-
Fantasy side is the real world and the Disney world.
Yeah, but except for the fact that it can't be because it doesn't happen in Final Fantasy. So this isn't the real Final Fantasy world. It's a mashup that exists. Yeah, but that's equally dumb. I think plots where character gets sucked into video game. It's like that's a dumb idea. No offense. There's nothing. I've never seen that done well. I guess is the way I should say it, because maybe someone could do it better than it has ever been done. But I've never seen it done well because it's a concept that I think is it's a writing prompt. It's fan fiction. And I'm okay with certain levels of fan fiction in the sense of hypotheticals and sort of, let's, as a discussion of the work. But the moment they start to supersede and they start to act as though they're creating an actual history, it's like, hypotheticals are fun when they're hypotheticals. If you start to try to make them more than hypotheticals, they start to lose their semblance of reality.
Okay.
I am not doing well on this, and I'm not sure I can make my point clearer because I'm not.
No, I think you've made it fairly clear. But the bottom line is,
to me, more
I
of
will
something
continue
is
to
not better
encourage people
unless
to
that more
play
is
Kingdom
good.
Hearts.
Maybe that's what I'm getting at. Is you seem to be of the opinion that, like, well, if it gives me more of a thing that I liked, then I'll be, happy for it.
But
to me, it has to be
I
as
suppose
good
I'll
as the
say
thing
it this
I
way.
liked.
It's
More of a
easier
thing.
for me to be pleased with that than it was at the beginning. But I wouldn't say it's like, if it's not good, but it's more, then I'm fine. It's like, no, it has to still be good and more. But I'm maybe
what if
less
it's not as
stringent
good?
the second time.
What if it's not as good but more?
If it's not as good, but it's still decent, I go, yeah.
See, I would still find that a little bit disappointing.
Maybe.
Because I would rather a perfect whole that is small than a perfect or than a
imperfect,
than a decent larger world. Because it's like, okay, but now it's only decent. Like, they could absolutely, because I'm going to fulfill the law, they could have made Arcane into a full 20 episode thing. And maybe they could have done it of the equal quality. I would kind of doubt that, because I think part of what makes Arcane good is its really sharpened efficiency. But it's like, simply the fact that they could have done that doesn't mean that I would have liked it as much, because you would have, unless you also increase the quality, all you're doing is spreading that quality over more area, which means each individual piece is less good. You either, if you're going to expand it, you have to add a commensurate amount of quality so that each individual piece remains as good.
And for you, Final Fantasy isn't that.
I've never played much Final Fantasy either, so to suggest that you're going to take something I'm not very familiar with things that I am familiar with but don't want more of, it's not something it's not a recipe for something that I'm eager for.
Okay, there you go. But for me, I enjoy them.
Well, go right ahead. Do that away from me. We'll go up until I die, so, I don't know, give us a closing remark. Well, I guess
Go on.
not a
It's not going to be
remark.
right now because you're going to
I'm gonna die.
make it all the way to the. Oh, unless this guy
Not
shows
necessarily.
you.
I mean, I'm down to my last refill on health, and
To
I'm.
turn you into soil for his garden. In
In
fact, he's going to do it right now.
Why isn't it opening the door? Okay, I'm out of healing.
Garden
potions of the
soil,
door.
here you come.
The door's not opening. Did I have to? Okay. The door opens and it's too late. Oh, I have one chance left.
That's a good
I'm not
lesson
gonna
for
take
life there.
The door opens as you appear, and then you die.
And yet it will be too late.
And I have a chance.
It's like
but I'm
the
not
grass
gonna
is
take
always
it.
greener, except it gives you a little bit of hope and then slams the door in your face.
Grass is greener because it's turf.